August 1st of 2018. Around 8 a.m., Sam heads out on the Vesper Trail. She had planned to check in with her boyfriend, Kevin, that evening by 6 p.m. He was unable to hike that day due to he had something with work, so he couldn't go. But he did text her that morning and said, "Be safe, SOS me if anything goes haywire." And her reply was, "Thanks, baby, I love you." So that was the last communication that Kevin or anyone had with Sam. Sam did sign the register at the trailhead for the Mountain Loop Highway. This would be the last known location for Sam. The register is used to log hikers on the Sunrise Mine Trail. So we have the text around 8 a.m., and then we have, at some point in the morning, Sam signed the register at the beginning of the trailhead. So that is the only official location that we know where she was. Other day hikers recall seeing her hiking up, mainly because of, she was bald and she liked to hike a lot of times in just a sports bra, which is kind of uncommon. So people remember distinctly, seeing her going up the mountain. And I did see in some articles, there were some reports that state Sam did summit Vesper Peak and then disappeared at some point on her way down, but others have disputed that claim. So we don't really know if she made it up to the peak of Vesper Peak.
Yeah, they didn't mention why they assume that?
No, I'm trying to recall in the research I did, there were a couple articles that say she summited, and then people in the comments were saying, no, that never happened. So I think it's safe to assume that we don't know if she made it up to the peak or if she made it back down and when she disappeared along that timeline. We do know that people saw her going up. So at some point in the day, someone saw her. So now we're on August 1st of 2018 in the evening. This has got to be sometime after 6 p.m. because that's when she was supposed to check in with her boyfriend, Kevin. Kevin grew concerned that she hadn't called or texted him yet. This was something they always did. She would always text at 6 p.m. or whatever time they agreed upon. And when she didn't text him or call him, he got concerned. So Sam got in his car and drove up to Vesper Peak. So he drove to the trailhead a little over an hour and a half from Belltown, stopping at a gas station to buy a flashlight. When he got there, the parking lot was empty, but he could see that her car was still there. So her car was parked in the gravel parking lot at the trailhead. So we know she was there. Her car was there. She signed the register. People on the trail saw her. So it's now 10 p.m. on the 1st. And with the flashlight in his hand, Kevin starts hiking up the path in the middle of the night.
Jeez, that's dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know that,
did he call anybody at that point, or? I
don't think so. There was nothing that I read said that he told anyone he was going up there to look for. And this is where things start to not make sense to me, partly because if it sounds like Kevin did a lot of hiking with her, and does he not have, like a headlamp or any kind of gear that he could go? Like if I'm going to look for somebody in the middle of the night in a rugged, remote forest, I'm going to bring a lot of gear with me in case I get lost or injured, because it's at night. Hiking in the dark is, pretty dangerous, even if you know the area.
Yeah, maybe he's just super concerned and really not thinking, just went straight there.
Just went straight there, didn't grab anything, and drove right to the trailhead. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's what he did. And of course, on the last push up to Vesper Peak, Kevin tripped and broke his flashlight, forcing him to turn back, and he had to use his cell phone light to make the trip back to his car. So he then drove 20 miles back down the Mountain Loop Highway to the Verlo Public Service Center, a visitor center staffed by U.S. Forest Service rangers during the day but closed at night. But this is interesting. I think on our trip to West Virginia, you took a picture next to a payphone.
Yeah.
And you were making, jokes about how last time you saw him was like 20 years ago.
Yeah. It was working too. That's why it was pretty crazy to me.
Yeah. But at this service station, they actually have a payphone there, and it's been a lifesaver for a lot of missing people. There have been 25 calls to 911 made between 2015 and 2017 alone. So they have this payphone kind of out in the middle of nowhere so that you can call if something happens. So he calls 911 to report her missing, and they do have a recording of Kevin's 911 call. And the operator asks what Sam had with her, and he goes, little cold weather gear, no headlamp, 3 or 4 sandwiches plus snacks. She never skimped on snacks. His voice sounded strained, sometimes wavering with panic. He goes on to say, I had my flashlight going, banging, screaming, no word. And then he finally tells the 911 operator that I think she's hurt. So
that's so terrifying.
Yeah, so, this kind of gives us a little insight into the gear that Sam might have had with her, and obviously she wasn't preparing for an overnight stay in this area. She didn't have, much cold weather gear, no headlamp, and, some sandwiches and stuff, but to me, it doesn't sound like she was planning for a, multi-day stay in the woods.
Yeah.
So it's now August 2nd of 2018, 1:30 a.m., Kevin is still at the station, so now Sergeant John Q. Adams arrives. This was Adams' first year as a search and rescue sergeant. He took over from a predecessor who oversaw SAR response for 22 years at the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. Kevin had also, around this time, posted a plea on Facebook, SOS, SOS, need help ASAP, he wrote. Missing Samantha Sayers, please hurry, back in Pennsylvania. This was how Sam's mother heard of the news. So can you imagine not getting a call from anyone, or you just read a post on Facebook that says like SOS, SOS, need help ASAP. I mean, that's got to be terrifying. So it is now August 2nd, 2018 at 6 a.m. So the search and rescue operation got rolling pretty darn fast. So we can safely say that probably around 1:30 a.m. is when Sam was officially reported missing, and volunteers started arriving at 6 a.m. At the station, and they took off in teams to comb the trail and call out Sam's name. Adams dispatched the county-owned Snowhawk 1 helicopter on what was turning into be a cloudy Thursday. The aircraft was equipped with FLIR, which is an infrared camera that scanned for heat signatures. And the pilots also were just sticking their heads out the window looking.
I've been looking at Google Earth and some of the maps, and the trail is visible from satellite. So it's that's even in some of the forested areas. Yeah. I can see it on Google Earth, where the trail is distinct from the actual river. Yeah. And then it gets above this tree area where it's fairly wide open. So I could imagine that would work for them just looking out the window. Yeah. So, that helicopter's in the air with FLIR using their infrared radar, and they actually spotted a tree on fire, but they didn't see Sam. Reports go on to state that Everett Mountain Rescue, a specialized group of volunteers equipped to explore Vesper's alpine environment, joined the operation as well. So, like we stated earlier, this did turn out to be one of the larger search and rescue operations in Washington State's history, and you can kind of see that as I go into kind of what happened during the search. So we're now on the weekend. It's August 4th of 2018. SAR teams, which are all volunteers from King, Skagit, Kitsap, Kittitas, and Pierce counties, had deployed along with 4 other mountain rescue squads. They had trained dogs to check for scents, and human trackers scoured for footprints. Others examined the creek. Adams established an operation base at nearby Big Four ice caves and at Spada Lake, far below Vesper's southwest side. Also, a dozen PJs, or what they're called Air Force pararescue personnel, came up from Oregon, and they flew Navy missions. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, they had a lot of the best people you could have working on this thing.
Yeah, and a real interesting thing happened, and I think this must have been just oh, we found her, and then kind of their hopes were crushed. But an Air Force rescue coordination team was actively monitoring Sam's phones for pings, and a sign of brief connectivity to cellular sites. They had nothing since mid-afternoon on August 1st when Sam's phone pinged near the summit. So we have another piece of evidence right there that she was close to the summit, at least based on cell phone tower data. So that's, I guess, one of the only areas in the region that gets cell service. And then they had a breakthrough. Sam's phone pinged and it pinged from somewhere in Seattle near Belltown. So they're like, holy cow, she made it back off the mountain and is in Seattle. So the Seattle Police Department was dispatched to the coordinates, but when they knocked on the door to Kevin and Sam's apartment, Sam wasn't there. What happened was Kevin's mother, who had flown in from Louisiana, had spent the day working with the phone carrier to access information on Sam's cell phone. And basically what the carrier did was they loaded the SIM signature onto Dawn's mobile phone, effectively cloning Sam's phone, which is why it pinged in Seattle.
Oh, my gosh.
So, like, for probably a couple hours, they legitimately thought that Sam made it back to Seattle, which is crazy. And that's the first time I've heard of that happening during a search where they've cloned the phone.
That's like cool that they did that, but like how like retching is that to find out like you have this like roller coaster of like I think we got her, and then you find out it's like no, it's not.
So the official search lasted for 22 days and ended on August 23rd of 2018. This is a direct quote from Search and Rescue Sergeant John Adams. He said, "We have exhausted all leads and tips. We've interviewed all witnesses who have come forward. We have checked and double-checked the possible routes we believe Sam could have taken. If there was a place we thought she could get to, we put people there to look for Sam, often putting our volunteers and personnel at great risk due to the rugged, remote, and dangerous terrain." So after 22 days of extensive searching, no definitive signs ever surfaced. They did find some footsteps on the southeast side, which they think could have been Sam's, but they weren't sure, and it didn't really reveal anything.
And they said it's pretty heavily trafficked site, so that's what it's like. It's hard to
heavily
determine.
trafficked in a rugged, remote area, so probably, it's not like a trail and glacier or something, but
sure.
These searchers looked in every place a hiker could have conceivably fallen, but some couldn't be completely ruled out. Adams went on to say that below the steep north face of Vesper Peak, the edge of the glacier formed a moat at the base of the cliff. Its bottom impossible to reach beneath the ice. So there is a chance she could have fallen. And Elizabeth actually mentioned this in one of her theories, that if someone had fallen into that spot on the mountain, there's no way searchers could get down there safely to search.
Repeat where it was again, just because I pulled the map up and I want to see.
Yeah, so below the steep north face of Vesper Peak, there's an edge of a glacier that forms a moat at the base of the cliff. Its bottom is impossible to reach beneath the ice. So somebody can conceivably fall from the peak and get stuck down in there, and there's no way searchers would be able to get down there to search.
Jeez.
So there is a chance. And we're not to theories yet, so I won't go into too much theory here, but I just don't see someone that experienced in good weather falling.
Yeah. Taking risks by themselves.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it if I was by myself.
That just doesn't make sense to me. So to sum up the search, in total, 70 searchers on foot, 14 dog teams, and helicopters searched the Vesper area to no avail. At one point, drone operators and the sheriff's Marine unit were involved. In addition, volunteer searchers from around the state spent thousands of hours of time leaving bags with a note saying, "Stay strong, we're looking for you, everyone is thinking of you," with a poncho, socks, energy bars, compass, flashlight, fire sticks, and a lighter. The sheriff's office said that since August 2nd, search operations included 357 hours of air operations from the sheriff's office and other agencies, 105 hours of drone operations in the search area, 82 hours for the Marine unit to support search teams in Spada Lake, 329 hours for a sheriff's office search and rescue personnel, and thousands of volunteer hours from search and rescue teams from around the state. So a massive operation, it's in the theories. I'm going to go into why I think they didn't find her, but you would think, unless she fell from the peak into that area by the glacier where they couldn't search, you would find her.
Yeah.
If something happened.
Yeah. Granted, these images from the satellite, were taken potentially not when she was there, but I mean, it's snowy in the images.
Yeah.
and it's just so wide open. It's not like there's a ton of brush. And like I said, these trails are so well marked. You can see them from the satellite, which is not super common.
Mm-hmm. So August 24th, 2018, the unofficial search for Sam starts. And I won't go into too much detail because there's a lot of additional information here. But David Francis, he's a Minnesota man who lost his son 13 years earlier. He now leads a foundation to aid families and adults lost in the wilderness. He flew to Seattle to meet with Kevin and the county SAR team to kind of make a plan because the family still wanted to keep searching. And his advice was to follow a mountain man named Bud Carr. Now, Bud Carr, I've heard of his name before. One of the podcasts that I've talked with the hosts, it's called Lost in the Woods. They actually interviewed Bud Carr in one of their episodes a few episodes ago. But he was raised by a father who introduced him to both search and rescue early on, and he's a very defiant, self-sufficient guy. He said he's kind of militant. His voice softer than his camo wardrobe suggests. Yeah. And he's like, I've always had this warrior mindset, being proficient, anything that militant. So impressed by Carr's careful hand-drawn maps of the search area, Francis recommended that he be put in charge of the family's search operation. So between Carr's military mindset and Kevin's own stint in the Navy, they approached the mountain with a tactical eye. And they actually called it Operation Relentless Pursuit. But in the Belltown apartment, they hung maps and they scrawled out Sharpie notes directly on the wall. They wrote operating plans, considered moon phases and water sources. I mean, they were literally going at this like a military operation.
Yeah, they broke everything down.
Yeah, and Kevin asked his father, the command chief warrant officer in the Louisiana National Guard, to run the mountain camp. So with his dark pointed goatee and survivalist rhetoric, Carr rubbed many people the wrong way. So Carr is kind of one of those characters who, a lot of those people that are very kind of self-confident and like in charge, kind of either love him or hate him.
Sure.
And he did rub a lot of people the wrong way. Online critics pulled up evidence of past felonies. He helped burgle, I always love that word, burgle a gun store before the year 2000. And he admits this, but he found Buddhism in his 4 years in prison, and he's kind of a reformed person. So I wouldn't hold that against him. I mean,
well, I wouldn't. A lot of times you see like people who used to be addicts and drugs or criminals that are actually reformed.
Yeah.
They get like relentless in the pursuit of doing better things.
Yeah. They devote their life to helping others.
Yeah, and a lot of times they have more drive as a result of their past life to like go really hard at stuff. So I mean, that looks like it's in line. It's like
he served his time.
He served his time, and if he actually was like repentant of his time, like he probably looks at life as how can I like make up for what I've done.
Yeah,
and you can tell like he's going hard at this thing for somebody he doesn't know.
Yep,
and he's like, I'm gonna help this person.
Yeah, and he kind of he leads a group of people that does a lot of searches for missing people once the official search ends. So he is doing a lot of good and trying to help find people. There was a lot of online criticism though of the campsite that they had. Apparently, they weren't following like a leave no trace principle, and kind of their goal was to find Sam at any cost necessary. So.
They probably weren't the cleanest.
Yeah, I mean, even the U.S. Forest Service denied access for their helicopter, and they reached out to politicians and anyone they could, and eventually got approvals. But he was a very polarizing figure, and a lot of locals probably didn't like him. And
as soon as you said online criticism, like, well,
yeah, exactly,
you can't do anything. You not get criticism online from somebody who's unhappy.
Yeah, so I mean that is, and they're still looking for it to this day. I mean, it was only 2018, so it wasn't that long ago, and no traces have been found. I did a lot of searching to see if there's been any new clues, and from what I can find, there's nothing since she went missing. There was a Facebook page called Find Sam Sayers that got up to 30,000 followers, and a GoFundMe page raised almost $60,000 for search efforts. So this became a very, a lot of people online, took over and
wanted to help. They had a lot of just random people come and help search. I read they had a trucker from Memphis who read about Sam online and dropped everything he was doing to come climb the mountain. And so you had people like that. And we've talked in prior cases where a lot of the search professionals, while grateful that these people want to help, it's not always the best situation when you have lots of inexperienced people.
Yeah, when you're getting amateurs involved, and I'm just this mountain is legit. Like it's not a small, like this is something I would very much enjoy doing because it's hard.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's doing it in a day, like this is something because I don't climb mountains every day. This would be like a 2-dayer for me because I wouldn't want to exert myself.
Yeah. So that's kind of the timeline.